Gurcharan, many people when they think about the BJP, they think about the BJP's politics, come first of all to what they consider the traditional red flags. The Ram Mandir, Uniform Civil Code, Article 370. Now on the Ram Mandir, the BJP commits itself to exploring all possibilities within the framework of the Constitution. On Article 370, it's committed to abrogation, but only after first discussing the issue with all stakeholders. And on the Uniform Civil Code, it's committing to drafting a code to ensure gender equality. Does that reassure you on these three red flag issues, or do you have cause to worry and have concern?
No, in fact, I think BJP is evolving. And, you know, in the last year, it's been transformed by Modi and in the sharpness of its agenda. And therefore, all the old style BJP concerns which made BJP unattractive and unappealing to somebody like me have now been addressed. And I do think that they are a party that's moving towards the center, as Arvind said, and they're showing a sensitivity for the whole. They're broadening their appeal, and this is all to the good.
Let me bring in Siddharth Varadarajan at that point. Siddharth, unlike Badshah Sen, who said that he's prepared to accept at face value what's written in the manifesto, and he accepted that this wasn't the normal language, the normal way the BJP talked about the minorities, and unlike Mr. Gurcharan Das, who believes the BJP is broadening, you were skeptical. You felt that this was something Mr. Modi had to say, because if he hadn't, the absence of such language would have stood out and created a problem. After hearing the two of them, do you want to reconsider, or do you want to stand by your position?
No, because I think, Modi is in this contest to win the election, and clearly reaching out to Muslims is one way in which he can do that, and it doesn't surprise me that he would want to make this kind of an appeal. Incidentally, many of the proposals contained in the 2014 manifesto in terms of the development for Muslims are there in the 2009 manifesto. Of course, the framing is a little bit less jarring this time, but the proposed measures are the same. But, in terms of what Mr. Gurcharan Das is saying, I mean, you see, you have, there is the latent or the recessed presence of the core issues which are very much there in this manifesto. The Ram Temple, in my view, there should be no place for this kind of, when you say that India belongs to all Indians, why should there be in this manifesto of a party that professes to speak for all Indians?
But can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you? Remember, in 98...
Why not rebuilding the Babri Masjid?
Let me interrupt you, put this to you. You see, Siddharth, permit an interruption. In 98 and 99, the BJP was actually talking about legislation to create a Ram temple. Okay? That was considered by many people to be offensive. They then reduced that in 2004 with Pramod Mahajan's vision statement to simply doing it constitutionally or judicially as a result of a verdict. Now they've even dropped the judicial bit. They're simply talking about exploring all possibilities within the framework of the Constitution. There's a clear progression there. Don't you want to recognize that?
No. The progression occurred between 98 and 99 when the BJP realized that it does not have the steam to come to power by itself. So when you are trying to appeal to a broader section of voters, you're trying to appeal and build an alliance with other parties, you have to drop the harsh edge with which you framed the Ram Janambhoomi issue earlier. But its mere presence in the manifesto, I would contend, goes against the grain of the BJP's professed belief that India belongs to all its peoples, and that there is no differentiation between citizens. There is no, everybody is equal.
Let Nirmala answer that. Nirmala Sitharaman, you have a very interesting divergence of opinion that's emerged. Some people believe that the language is surprising, but it's welcome, and they're prepared to accept it upfront. Siddharth insists that even the very concept of the Ram Mandir shouldn't have been in your manifesto, because its presence, no matter how you phrase it, suggests that in fact you don't believe India belongs to everyone. How do you answer Siddharth's dissident note?
Belongs to everyone does not mean that you run away from those who want it. There is a section who want it, and we are very clearly saying even for that section we'll do it as per law. And even earlier the matter was in the court, and once the verdict comes out, we'll be able to do something about it. Does this mean that when Siddharth Varadarajan or people who have similar beliefs think that this should not be in my manifesto, I should remove. There are him, his size of number of people and many more who want it there. What answer would you want to give them?
Are you convinced by that answer?
Well, you see, this, since I didn't come into the on the Ram Temple issue, I was looking purely at that part of the manifesto which talks
minorities
about,
and Muslims.
Yes. So now I was not also looking at, again, it was, as I said, in parts. If you look again, there is a contradictory element to all this. Like we saw the contradictory element in the economic part of the manifesto, there is references, as Siddharth said, to appeasement. How can you appease people whom you yourself are saying are extremely poor? All these years they haven't been appeased, because appeasement to me means that they get appeased financially, that they're pulled out.
I'm sorry, I might have to differ there. We don't believe in appeasement, whereas we believe in better governance through which even sections which are who are.
I wasn't saying
it's
that.
not saying you believe in appeasement.
I
You're saying
didn't
on the
say
one
you
hand
believe.
you think that the Muslims are especially
that's
poor.
right, that's
On the other hand, you're saying appeasement is wrong. But action taken for those
Exactly,
who are
I'm trying to
especially
answer
poor
you
will
that.
always be
No,
called
no,
appeasement.
I'm trying to answer that very question. If you would only listen to me. To recognize that there is a backwardness is not to say I need to immediately do something for them at the cost of somebody else. I will.
Why should it be at the cost of someone
Just a
else?
minute. At the way in which governance should happen in such a way that no one feels left out.
Can I can I interrupt? You have a section for the specially disabled. There are special measures for the specially disabled. Someone can turn around and say those are measures specially for them at the cost of everyone else. Why are measures for Muslims, who you acknowledge are especially poor, why are those measures at the cost of everyone else?
Because that is as a result of appeasement politics, and we wouldn't want to go in the same route.
The fact remains is this.
What you do for the specially disabled is not a form of appeasement politics?
Not at all, because special requirement on the basis of physical.
The fact remains is, I'd like to know what steps the previous government has taken by way of appeasement.
For
have
example,
they reserved jobs? Have they given them special benefits? Have they given them monetary
But I suppose
handouts?
she means what the Sachar committee was recommending would be an example.
That was a recommendation.
But by the very measure of such a committee, in places where governance has been much better, such deprivation has not happened, but in any other place, deprivation has happened because of bad governance. That's where the difference comes.
One quick question before I pull out and come to a sense of conclusion about this discussion. And that quick question is this. Given that you accept that Muslims are especially poor, and that's your language, not mine, are there any measures that would be targeted primarily, not necessarily exclusively, but primarily at them? Because if they're especially poor, they may need a special attention.
See, that is where I'm just picking up on one of the measures which has been mentioned in terms of getting better quality education reach, even madrasa schools, so that students coming out of them will have better skills, better employability, and therefore focused attention be given to make better schools out of madrasas.
So then
that's one example that I've taken.
And that's an example of something that's targeted at them.
But by giving them such...
Sorry. I want to pull out of this discussion about appeasement and targeting, and
I haven't come. Can I comment on this issue? I think it's a difference between objectives and methods. The method can be giving a door to individual segments, whether it's the poor or this thing, or to develop where they live, the industries they are working, or the area they are working.
Let's pull out of this discussion, because I want to leave the audience with some sense of overview, and I'll go first to Gurcharan Das and then to Siddharth Varadarajan, because in a sense they represent polar opposite opinions. Mr. Gurcharan Das, when you look at the treatment of the Ram Mandir, the stress on administrative reform, the concept of a new Team India, opening up the government to outsiders, the clear talk of labour law reform, even if Prakash Javadekar in part 1 seemed to interpret it very differently, and the stress on infrastructure, that's another thing that we haven't talked about. Do you get the feeling that this manifesto has the visible stamp of Narendra Modi? A quick answer.
Well, I think it does, but it could have, if it had been done by him, it would have been a much sharper, more visionary, more focused, action-oriented document than it has turned out to be, which is a document that's been produced by a committee.
Siddharth Varadarajan, you're someone who's known to be a critic of Narendra Modi. You've written about your concerns and apprehensions of any government that he may form. Does this manifesto give you some reassurance, or are your concerns as stark and as vivid as they were?
This manifesto makes no difference to my assessment, and proof of the pudding is the fact that the BJP chose to release it when voting has already started. That itself tells you how irrelevant the manifesto is in terms of the political outlook and approach of the government. So this is something the government that Mr. Modi may want to form. So this is something which, of course, puts in consensual language many of the ideas that have been bandied about. But as far as its actual import in the kind of government that he would run were he to become Prime Minister, I wouldn't assign too much of value to this document, let alone feel reassured
very quickly
by some of the formulations.
You were more appreciative of some of the concepts in this manifesto, more willing to accept that there is a new voice, particularly when we talk about the minorities and the Muslims. How do you view this manifesto? One that reassures you? Lessens some of your apprehensions? A quick answer.
Well, I would take the same position as Siddharth, only insofar as manifestos are not meant to be implemented. It's slogans which get implemented. So I'd like to see slogans being, these parts of this manifesto being translated into public slogans.
All right.
And if they're done, then one gets a further reassurance.
We've run right out of time. My thanks to all three of you for coming to studio. My thanks also to Siddharth Varadarajan and Gurcharan Das. Coming up next, headline today's Election Express reaches Muzaffarnagar. A day after Mulayam came calling, Rahul Kanwal and Javed Ansari gauge the mood of the people of the riot-hit area. All of that in a moment's time, but from me, goodbye, good night.